Welcome in, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to another episode of Red, White, and Ruthless. We apologize for the delays. My partner, unfortunately, is not on, Sean Kula of the Red, White, and Bills. Hopefully, he will be on later on in the show. Maybe a little bit of a issue with the late night, but we'll try and hopefully get him on tonight. We're going to talk about the game preview of the Buffalo Bills and New York Jets today on Red, White, and Ruthless. If you're new to the channel, don't forget to like and subscribe. Follow us on all social media platforms. You can find Nickel City Mafia on YouTube, Facebook, as well as on Instagram. And you can find myself, Go Bills Podcast, on YouTube, Instagram, and Facebook too. So today we're going to talk about the matchup between the New York Jets and Buffalo Bills. We'll start off by setting the stage for both teams, and then we'll work our way into the injury reports as well as some of the offseason additions for the New York Jets. And then we'll get into the players to watch and keys to the game, and we'll give you a score prediction. And hopefully, like I said, we'll get Sean Kula back on the show. So let's begin with the records for both teams and what they did last week. And we'll start off with the Buffalo Bills, as they are the visiting team. And we saw what they did in week 1 against the Baltimore Ravens. The Bills are 1-0 after defeating the Baltimore Ravens 41-40 in a shootout game that came down to the last second. And the Bills were down 15 points in the game last week, and they were able to come back and get the win on a last-second field goal, a 32-yarder by Matt Prater. And it was probably one of the best games that I've ever watched being a Bills fan. Now, I didn't get to see the greatest comeback in NFL history for a long time with Frank Wright, but this was one of the best games, and obviously you can tell I'm losing some hair up top still, and I'm going to continue to lose hair for years to come with our Buffalo Bills. On the other side of the ball, the New York Jets, they had a narrow loss to the Pittsburgh Steelers, 32-34. This is the first AFC East game for the Buffalo Bills and the New York Jets. The Jets last week played Aaron Rodgers and the Pittsburgh Steelers. It was a game that the Jets should have won, that unfortunately weren't able to. And the Jets offense looked very good with Justin Fields and Garrett Wilson gaining chemistry. And we'll see what happens this week for the Buffalo Bills. The money line on this game is currently at 6.5 points for the Buffalo Bills, and they have a 65% probability of winning this game. And this is with the news coming out on Tuesday. We'll see what happens with the updated news of the injuries for the Buffalo Bills and the New York Jets if that line changes. Let's get into some of the injuries for both teams. And I do see you guys coming into the chat. I see Mike Fortin coming in, as well as John Robert from Facebook. Appreciate you guys coming in. I think Keontae Jenkins got elevated because Shaq Lawson will be inactive. That could very well be. As well as Bills Mafia, Bills fan CA coming into the chat saying one of the greatest regular season games ever. Absolutely. So let's get into the key injuries to watch out for. As we know, for the Buffalo Bills side of things, as they are the visiting team, Ed Oliver popped up on the injury report after speaking to the press on Wednesday. Looked good. Unfortunately, on Thursday, came into the locker room and he was in a walking boot and a scooter, so he will not play in this game. The Bills did elevate Zion Logue to the active roster, and he could very well play in this game. A couple people that are questionable for this game are Greg Rousseau. He has a knee injury. Shaq Thompson has a hamstring/hand injury. Dawson Knox with a hip injury that's being monitored. And James Cook returned to full participation, so he is no longer on the injury report for the Buffalo Bills. On the other side of the ball for the New York Jets, they have Sauce Gardner with a groin injury, was limited throughout the week. Mason Taylor, their tight end, had an ankle injury. He returned to the practice field. Also, defensive lineman Jay Tufele, I'm going to pronounce it wrong, Tufele, had an illness and was out of Wednesday's practice. And there's a couple of players that were ruled out for the New York Jets too. Jay Tufele was ruled out with the illness. He will be out this week, as well as running back Kene Nwangwu, hopefully I pronounced that right, with a hamstring injury, has been ruled out for Sunday's game against the Bills. And Josh Reynolds, the wide receiver who came over from the Detroit Lions and Denver Broncos, has been ruled out against Buffalo. Let's get into the matchups real quick. We'll also get into the key additions for the New York Jets this offseason, but I want to get into the matchup overall for the Buffalo Bills and what they have at stake. And let's start off with the matchup and how it swings. This is going to be a very tough matchup, as this is a very stacked defensive line of the New York Jets. And my first key to the game, hopefully we can get Sean on for his keys as well, but my first key to the game is the Bills offensive line versus the Jets pass rush. And you can tell that the edges and run game is going to be tough. The New York Jets have a ton of players in Jermaine Johnson as well as Quinnen Williams that you have to stop. Last week we saw Jermaine Johnson have some big plays on Aaron Rodgers, and that's one of the things that I'm definitely looking for and wondering what's going to happen for the Buffalo Bills. Are they going to be able to handle this offensive line with the Jets defensive line? The second key to the game is going to be the explosiveness of the Bills and what they're going to do on offense and getting the ball out of Josh Allen's hands probably quickly. I want to see what they're going to do with the limitations of Sauce Gardner. Are they going to attack him in this game? And this could be a very good game for Keon Coleman, who had 112 yards for the Buffalo Bills last week. We could see another great matchup with him against Sauce Gardner. Now, New York normally plays man-to-man coverage, and this could be a shade of help for Keon Coleman, who posted 8 catches for 112 yards and a touchdown last week in week 1. Buffalo can force checks with the bunch stack and motions, and they can generate some free access on slants for Keon to get open. Another matchup that I'm looking forward to seeing is going to be the I'm sorry, I want to move on to this real quick. I apologize. It's going to be Breece Hall versus the Bills' second level and first level. Last week, we saw Derrick Henry go off against Buffalo and their defensive line. And with having Ed Oliver out in this game, it's going to be interesting to see what the Buffalo Bills are going to be able to do stopping the run. Now, Breece Hall is one of the most elite running backs in the NFL, and Buffalo on a short leash with guys like Deion Walker and even TJ Sanders being rookies. I need to see somebody step up in that defensive line room for the Buffalo Bills this week, and it has to be one of the rookies for the Buffalo Bills, as they do have Larry Ogunjobi that's out on suspension. So one of these rookies has to step up, and they have to have a big game against Buffalo. And it not only does it come down to the rookies, but also having Zion Logue out there. You're going to see a lot of reps from the younger players, and who's going to be able to disrupt the middle for the Buffalo Bills defensive line against a pretty decent Jets offensive line. So the Hall last week had 19 carries for 170 yards in week 1, and the New York Jets have utilized a new wide zone, and it's going to be interesting with the counters that are being set up with Fields and Breece Hall. You could see some read options that we saw last week from the Baltimore Ravens and Lamar Jackson. This could help the Jets be able to move down the field, and Buffalo is going to be forced to integrate from the edge as well as from the inside and utilize that nickel and overhangs system that Sean McDermott runs. So the Bills must be clean, and they must get stops from guys like Greg Rousseau and the interior defensive line of the Buffalo Bills in this situation. Then it's going to be a red zone chess match for the Buffalo Bills, and Buffalo is going to have to utilize Josh Allen's ability to have rollouts as well as get James Cook involved on some screens when it comes to the blitz package that you're going to see from Aaron Glenn and the New York Jets. So I want to see what the Bills can utilize with guys like Dalton Kincaid, Dawson Knox on quick reads. The Jets have struggled against tight ends in the red zone, and this could be a very good matchup when you have some rotations and stuff like that for the Buffalo Bills. So you could see some movement on the line for the Buffalo Bills in order to get the matchups that they need, and it's going to be fun to watch. John Robert coming into the chat on Facebook saying, I would like Joshua Palmer to get his first touchdown as a Bill. Absolutely. I love that. TJ Sanders and Deion Walker are known for being more of their pass rushing. I completely agree with you there too in what you're saying. So it's interesting to see. We'll get into a little bit more of the players to watch as well in a second, but let's get into what do the Bills need to do in order to get a win here for the team and go 2-0 and have their first win in the AFC East. And it's going to come down to a few things for me. It's going to be early down rhythm. They need to utilize the RPO/quick game to keep the sticks on schedule and build in a few design quarterback keepers from Josh Allen to punish man-to-man coverage. They also need to protect the edges, side help to the hot slot, and create some chip run blocks from their running backs in order to slow down the pass rush of the New York Jets. Then on the other side of the ball, they need to set a hard edge on Justin Fields. They need to contain him, keep him in the pocket, and don't let him utilize the rollouts and boots that he was utilizing in week 1 against the Pittsburgh defense. Also, their zone needs to have discipline versus the scramble drill that you will see with Garrett Wilson. Now, you remember back to college, Justin Fields played with Garrett Wilson, so they have a lot of familiarity in terms of the NFL now going into from college to the NFL, and it's going to be fun to watch what they're going to do out there. But Buffalo needs to figure out where Garrett Wilson is on the field when Justin Fields is scrambling. Most likely he's going to go to his right side, so Buffalo needs to have double coverage on Garrett Wilson throughout this game when Justin Fields is scrambling outside the pocket. A few comments coming in on Facebook from John Robert saying Zion Logue is going to be stopping the run, as well as pressure and sack Justin Fields would help. Absolutely. Completely agree with what you're saying here, John, and appreciate your comments on Facebook. Let's get into the X factors for me from this matchup, which is going to be the Bills cornerbacks going up against this New York Jets wide receivers. I think that this can be interesting with Christian Benford being on the injury report, as well as Tre'Davious White being limited throughout the week. If Tre'Davious White comes back and he is the number 2 cornerback for the Buffalo Bills, I want to see what they can do to stop big plays. Unfortunately, they didn't do the best job in week 1, but I want to see them stop the big plays and have open field tackles. And it could come down to some cornerbacks having to make open field tackles when the second and first lines of the Bills defense are beaten. So I need to see a better job from them there too. Also, what the Jets need to do, they also have to have Breece Hall and Sauce Gardner go off in this game, in my opinion. Unfortunately, we are a Bills channel, but I want to give the other perspective of what the Jets need to do to get a win here. I do think that they need to have a good special teams day and have some hidden yardage on field positioning in MetLife that could get them the win too in this game. So, and also Garrett Wilson scrambling, if he is able to gain chemistry with Justin Fields, that could be another way for them to win this game as well. Let's go into my key players to watch for the New York Jets. And I mentioned the defensive line of the New York Jets. It comes down to Quinnen Williams. This is the player to watch. You have to double team him, triple team him, do whatever you can to make sure that he does not have a big game against Buffalo. Now, the interior offensive line last week for Buffalo didn't have the best job. We saw our friend David Edwards. He had a couple pressures, and PFF did not give him the best grade, according to Sean Kula, who does some of the offensive line and defensive line film. And I know he would agree with me when saying this, but I want to see what Buffalo can do to be able to stop Quinnen Williams in this game, whether it's running back chips, do whatever you can to create a clean pocket for Josh Allen, give him enough time to be able to throw the ball and get it to the open receiver in this game. Also, another player, as I mentioned, is going to be Sauce Gardner. If he is in this game, he can make an impact in this game. And I mentioned last week with Kyle Hamilton, you saw what happened throughout the game. Kyle Hamilton had a great game until he got injured, and Buffalo picked on him a little bit too. T-Jab coming into the chat on YouTube saying who got called up for Ed Oliver. It was Zion Logue getting called up for the Buffalo Bills. He was the player that was elevated. Unfortunately, Jordan Phillips was not elevated for the Buffalo Bills, but we could see him in the later part of the season. He's probably just getting into playing shape, and that's one of the reasons why they decided to go with Zion Logue in this game, and also the fact that Logue is more of the run stopper for the Buffalo Bills too. That could be another reason why. But overall, I do want to get into the score predictions for this game. I do have the Buffalo Bills winning this one. I don't think it's going to be the best contest just because what happened last week from Buffalo, I don't think it was their best game. I think they started off very slow. They were, in my opinion, they did get the first touchdown, but they kind of took their foot off the gas a little bit and got too comfortable. But I think that in this game, it's going to be a low-scoring game just because the defenses, they're very good. But I have the Bills winning this one, and I think it's going to be by more than a one-score game. I think that they're going to win 24-14. I don't think that the Jets are going to put a lot of points on the board just because they had a great week last week. But I think it's going to be a defensive battle, and Buffalo will be able to get a win here and go into a short week against the Miami Dolphins in week 3. So we'll see what happens after this game, and it's going to be fun to watch. Do you see some comments coming in saying from Bills fans CA saying, I'm worried Bills will have a letdown? That it very well could happen. But I think that what we've seen from the Bills overall is when they have a bad game, and we saw it last year, when they had a bad game, they step up in the next game and they get better. And I think that with what we saw in week 1, there, especially late in the game, that could be some momentum build up for the Buffalo Bills in week 2. I do apologize for coughing though, but let's see what the Bills can do. And with this one-score game that is projected, I do think that you should take the Bills plus 6.5 points or more if you are a betting person. Now, I don't always win my bets. I thought the Buffalo was going to win by more last week than 1 point, but we'll see what happens. Don't forget to like and subscribe, comment on social media for all of the shows that we are doing on Red, White, and Ruthless. Next week, we will be live. I told you guys that we were going to be live on Saturdays at 8:30 p.m. Eastern time. We are going to be moving the show just because of the week, and we want to test out a new schedule for you guys for Red, White, and Ruthless. We're going to move the show to Fridays at 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So we have a new time, guys. Make sure that you are aware of that. We will send out a update on YouTube as well and let you know what is going on there too. And I do see some comments coming in. I want to get into some of these comments real quick. Jero0951 coming into the chat saying that since we just cut X, they might put G-Shine in the slot more. I'm not sure what you mean by that because I'm a little confused on that. So I'm not sure what you mean by that. But hopefully somebody in the chat can reiterate what you are saying. I do apologize a little bit on that one. I did mention that Zion Logue got called up as well. Bills fan CA coming into the chat did answer that one. Let me get into T-Jab real quick. Do you know who the new defensive lineman is that we signed either today or yesterday. Yes, I think he is from Bama. Could he be a promising player? Yes, he was the second-round pick. I can't remember his first name, but it's Matthias is his last name. He was a second-round pick by the Washington Commanders, coming over to the Buffalo Bills. Has a lot of promise, just hasn't put it all together in the NFL. And he could be an interesting grab for the Buffalo Bills just because we do need some more depth on our defensive line, and we do rotate very well. What he reminds me of, and hopefully this is the case, is a player that if you look at in terms of like Major League Baseball, he's a player that he's bounced around the league a little bit, and he just needs a team that can develop him and get him to where he needs to go. And that's what I think that Buffalo can do here is with this package that they do, having defensive linemen rotate so well, is this could be a really good fit for Matthias. And we'll see what happens, but he does have an uphill battle to getting onto the 53-man roster and being one of the 48 players that gets called up on Sunday. That's a tough battle, but we could see him in a game potentially for the Buffalo Bills. And when his number is called on, he has to step up, and that's what's got to happen for the team. So we'll see what happens on if he does get called up. But like I mentioned, it is an uphill battle for him. And he could be a very good, promising player for the Buffalo Bills if he does get called up, especially when we have injuries. And we've had a ton of injuries to our defensive line over the years. His number could be called on, as I mentioned. But, guys, really appreciate you for coming out on a late night on the East Coast time. We do appreciate you for watching Red, White, and Ruthless. Hopefully everything's okay with Sean. And we'll see you guys on Friday, 9 o'clock Eastern Standard Time for our next Red, White, and Ruthless show. We will be doing a post-game show on the Miami Dolphins game. We will have a pre-game show, if all goes right, on Nickel City Mafia on Tuesday night. That will be a pre-recorded show that will be airing on Nickel City Mafia Tuesday night at some point. And we'll keep you updated on the rest of the schedule next week on Red, White, and Ruthless as well. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and we will see you on Saturday for our next show. Stay loud, stay proud, and as always, go Bills.